Welcome to another Wednesday live with Brent and Lee. If this is the first time you've been to our channel, my name is Lee Bricky, and I'm joined by my good friends Brent Starts from Unitas Lending. Brent, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing great, brother. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Good.
So tonight we're going to go through what's happening with the market as far as the asset markets. And we've seen some movement in the market today. And so we're going to talk about that. What's happening with the NASDAQ and the Dow, and also how the Treasury note is affecting rates right now, why rates are going down. We also had some great job numbers come in. So we are back to employment where we were before we left, before we went into COVID. And then we're going to give you a market update, all the numbers for July, and tell you what that means for August, and talk a little bit about what's going on right now in the market. This last couple of weeks have been a little strange. So let's get into it, Brent.
Yeah.
And I'm going to share my screen here. All right. So news this week. Inflation comes off a 40-year high, but stays elevated 8.5% as gas prices fall, but food, rent jump, and CPI report shows. So the CPI report has stayed the same. Dow jumps 500 points. NASDAQ surges 2%. Investors cheer lighter than expected inflation report. And then the 10-year Treasury yield drops, continuing trend of falling rates this week. So this is all, recent news that has come out. So Brent, talk about it, man. What do you think is going on here?
Man, some really interesting dynamics in the market today. I mean, the Fed's mandate is to balance, full employment, or as close to full employment as they can come, and price stabilization. In other words, inflation under control, right? And so we've had two reports this week in the last 5 days, right, where the jobs report comes in at 3.5% unemployment, which is essentially full employment, right? And so that would insinuate that the market's hot. In other words, the economy's going great. And then, so that's inflationary because it's wage-based inflation, with more people making money and all that good stuff. That's wonderful, right? But it can heat up and cause inflation. And so we had inflation numbers come from 9.1% down to 8.5%. And that's not the biggest news. It's really the biggest part of that report. If you look at the month to month from June 22, last month, and July 22, just that 1 month, inflation was flat. So the previous month to month from May to June was 1.3%, which is really hot inflation. You multiply it by 12 months, you're at 15.6% inflation if we were to be annualized, if you were to keep that pace. So coming in completely flat, July figures compared to June. So, that really surprised the markets. And of course, that is and non-inflationary. In other words, that's looking more towards like, hey, the economy's slowing down, possibly too much. In other words, hey, now we got to look at this recession information and two down quarters as far as GDP, 6 full months of the economy retracting. So we've got those two things going on at the same time. And, so the Fed has a really difficult job. They're going to sift through that. And I think the next jobs report is going to indicate what direction, rates might go. But certainly the markets, both stocks and bonds, loved the inflation report today. And that's one of the highest impact reports of the month. That and the jobs report, really the two things that they watch closely to predict what they need to do as far as interest rates.
Right. Well, I don't think the jobs are going to we're going to see a lot of layoffs, because even that we're at 3.6% on the job rate again, and the unemployment rate, there's still a lot of jobs out there. So
I think you just look at the corporate numbers, their quarterly figures quarter to quarter, and kind of see, what if companies are doing well. Some industries are going to get hit a little bit. I think anything tied to, well, transportation, anything tied to oil was really getting hit, and now I think, with prices coming down, that's a reflection of demand dropping, right? So not as many people traveling, not as many goods being shipped. All that is why you're seeing oil and gasoline prices go down. That's lower demand is what that is. And so that's anti-inflationary too. In other words, that should bring inflation down as well. So, we might see that, the Fed, what they've done so far may have been enough to pop the bubble and get things cooled down to the point where inflation isn't such an issue. 40-year high is serious business, so they had to do something pretty, but mortgage rates essentially doubled. They went from 3 to 6 essentially. And, when you double them, and that's what they really did back in the late 70s, early 80s, they basically doubled rates. And that's essentially what they did this time as well. It's just the numbers were much larger last time as far as, rates with the starting point was much higher. So we'll see.
Well, here's a quote from Joel Kahn. He's on CNBC. He says, there could be a potential silver lining in the market. He added, as stabilizing mortgage rates and rising inventory may bring some buyers back to the market during the second half of the year. So I went to a event with my real estate company on Monday. And, one of the things that was talked about is, FHA and VA has been left out of the mix for a while now. And they haven't really been able to buy houses. So this market shifting right now, I think, is an opportunity for FHA and VA to come back. And I was noticing the rates. Where are we sitting on the rate with FHA and VA right now?
Yeah, FHA and VA, we're in the the high 4s now, so we're back in the 4s, which is great. Conventionals really in the low 5s right now, depending on the credit profile and all that. A lot of considerations there, case by case, but very generally, 4.75 for FHA VA, and you're looking at about 5.25 for conventional right now.
Right. So, I mean, this is a good thing that, that we could see where, buyers are having a opportunity. So here's what we're talking about with the jobs increasing here. And see here. So U.S. labor market powers ahead with strong job gains despite recession fears. So back to unemployment rate holds steady at 3.6%. And we're seeing average hourly rising, earnings rising. One of the things that I'm hearing on the market news is, because rents are going up so high that employees are going to their employers and saying, hey, look, you got to give me a raise if I'm going to stay here because I can't afford to pay my rent and live. And so they're giving them these raises. So, what you're thinking, I mean, I just don't see any way out of this. As long as the job market stays high like it is, with inflation, ramping the way it is, in my opinion, it's tied to, oil and gas right now, especially food. So if we can get oil and gas down, I think we could, see things start changing a little bit. So if the gas prices keep coming down, I know just a little bit of dip that they've made, I've definitely noticed it because, I drive so much,
Oh, yeah. Right.
So I definitely noticed it.
It definitely hits the middle class and upper middle class and lower middle class, right? I mean, because those people, the working folks that need to commute, there's just no choice. I have talked to a couple people that are moving strictly or changing jobs rather to work closer to home because of the commute. Actually, I've talked to 2 people specifically this week already where they're making a change because they can't drive to work anymore that far. That was kind of a big decision they needed to make. So, yeah, you're right. As far as people needing to make more money, I lived in California for 23 years. And so that was a real thing to keep people in that style of living, that cost of living. It's a real consideration as a business owner. And so, I think, some states like that, they're really, they're $6 a gallon. They were over $6 a gallon and higher. There was a gas station, I believe, in Northern California. It was what, $8 or $9, Lee, something like that,
Right.
in the redwoods or something. I mean, that's just because of more rural areas and stuff, difficult to get to. But yeah, there were some crazy figures, and you look at that, and it's local, right? I mean, every state's different. They have tax considerations, and commutes are normal in other parts of the country. In our community's way to work's normal, but here, I mean, I think it really hurts the middle of the road folks and the workaday folks. And I think it's good to see those prices drop and gas to make it not so painful.
Right.
I'll tell you another thing too, Lee. I talked to a landlord this last week, and he said, market rents are just higher, and he's raising $400, $500 a month for on all his single family homes, and so that's a thing, that's a trend, and so you have to live somewhere. It's just not enough housing. That's
so explain to everyone, because a lot of people, they see the Fed raising rates on the prime, and they see this inflation, and then all of a sudden they're seeing mortgage rates decreasing. So explain why that has happening so that everyone can understand why the mortgage rates continue to go down, because you heard all of these, the mortgage rates could go to 10%, which we both know that that's not going to happen. No. I mean, that's a crazy world right now. I mean, It would totally sink the housing market completely. And so that's just not happening. Right. So explain why to folks the mortgage rates are going down, but the prime interest rates are going up on credit cards, cars, and any kind of furniture loan or anything like that you're buying.
Yeah, mortgage rates are tied to mortgage bonds, right? So everyone's heard of stocks and bonds, and there's a relationship between the two. And what mortgage rates follow really is the news as it comes out. So it literally goes up and down, just like Apple stock goes up and down all day long. And what the balance there is if you own equities, in other words, you own parts of companies, you own IBM stock or Apple stock or Google stock, those types of stocks, and they're perceived as a higher risk. In other words, the likelihood of a strong dividend or a strong quarterly report starts to go down. The economy's slowing down. Their revenues are slowing down. Investors begin to sell them and move into investments such as mortgage-backed securities or mortgages. They buy a mortgage. Your mortgage is someone else's investment, right? And so the demand for mortgages goes up. In other words, more people, want to buy those mortgages so they can lower those rates to track those funds for refinances and purchases as they're happening. So as stocks are perceived as higher risk, it's a flight to quality is the phrase that's used. So as there's a flight to quality, those yields that they they don't have to give a high of yield. In other words, interest rates drop because so that's really the relationship there, and really the news for inflation, or recession, all those types of things. Those investments really, they look at stocks and like they either getting in or out of stocks based on those news, and that really is poured into and affects directly the bond market because of the demand for mortgages as a safe investment. And that's really what's happened. Stocks have been selling off. They want to go back to mortgages because it's a safe place to park your money. It's backed by American real estate. There's no better investment than real estate in America, that's guaranteed by, that mortgage that they hold. Right. So, and they're all tons of equity, and, the values are there right now. There's never been a greater equity position as far as American real estate either. The dollar volume's never been higher as far as the amount of equity in those loans.
So let's look at the market a little bit. So this is the bidding wars from April to June, and this trend is continuing right now. I can tell you right now. So we're seeing bidding wars decrease monthly here, and in July they decreased also, and here in the beginning of August we're seeing the market really slow down. So inventory, we're seeing the inventory dipped at the beginning of January. Now it's moving on the upward. So we're getting more and more inventory on the market right now. And then foreclosure activity has actually dropped 4%. So you know, and then this was Rick Sharga. He's at Atom, and they Atom, I guess. I don't know how you pronounce it, but anyways, he's VP of marketing. I go on this site all the time. Says foreclosure activity across the United States continues its slow, steady climb back to pre-pandemic levels in the first half of 2022. So we saw foreclosures going up, right? But they got sucked off the market faster. While overall foreclosure activity is still running significantly below historical average, the dramatic increase in foreclosure starts to suggest that we may be back in normal levels by sometime early 2023. So meaning the market is starting to come back to a normalized market. But I can assure you that there's no flipping houses right now. I mean, we're still not there yet.
Yeah.
So here's what we're seeing in the market right now as far as a market update for July. So there were 1,550 homes in June for sale. July, we saw 1,537. So the amount of homes on the market actually decreased from June, July in Port St. Lucie. Number of homes sold decreased, though, also, and average time on the market has increased. So, but with that being said, if you look over at the screen here, we'll see that 126 homes were sold under asking, 79 homes were sold at asking. We still had 116 homes sold over asking, which means that, you know, we're still seeing, you know, increase in prices. And Port St. Lucie, one of the things that you're going to see in that market is you're going to see more appreciation there because of all the new home builders. There's so much new construction, and new construction fuels the market because they're constantly raising their prices on a monthly or bi-monthly basis. So sale times, though, have really started to increase. So 274 homes were sold under 30 days. 44 homes were sold in 30 to 90 days, and 3 homes were sold over 90 days. So, you know, we're seeing Port St. Lucie getting back into a more of a normalized market than we saw before. And then Martin County, the market's pretty much getting to a normal stage. So June, they had 680 homes for sale. July, more inventory went up, 730. Number of homes sold were 179 in June, July 109. So, and then you can look at the July and days on the market. We're at 23 days on the market. So 30 days on the market starts getting us back to more of a normal market. So this Martin County market, which would be Stewart, Palm City, and Jensen Beach, is seeing some normalization right now as far as last month goes. And I think that this is going to continue for sure there because it tends to be, a market that doesn't move as fast as Palm Beach County or Port St. Lucie. Right. And then looking at Palm Beach County, June, we had 10,000 homes, 10,133 homes for sale. Inventory increased by 3%. For July, number of homes sold actually decreased, and we're seeing the average time on the market at 31 days, 20 days, which a year ago was 31 days. So we're starting again, once we hit that 30-day market, 30 days on the market as an average, we're getting back to a normalized market. So going back here, we're 931 homes were sold under asking, 379 homes were sold at asking, and 536 homes were sold over asking. So again, this under asking price where you're seeing, 50% of the homes sold under asking, I really believe that, people are still trying to put their homes on the market overpriced. And I can assure you right now, those days are over. Yeah. So, sellers, if you're looking at this right now, you need to not overprice your homes, or you're going to be sitting on them, or you're going to be dropping the prices. And it's way better to be a little underpriced than it is to be overpriced, so that you can get 2 or 3 offers, on it. Because, right now we have listings sitting on the market, and we've had very few showings in the last week. So last weekend, pretty much across the board, and I speak to agents all over the United States, it was dead. So very little traffic for open houses, very little traffic for new construction. And on the breakdown on sale times, we're seeing that, still 79%, of the homes, 1,453 of all the homes sold in Palm Beach County were sold under 30 days. We're seeing, 345 sold 30 to 90 days and 48 sold over 90 days. So, this is pretty strong still here, that we're seeing the market moving. So my opinion to buyers, and when you look at these numbers, is now is a good time to get out there and find a home that fits your needs, because there's a lot more inventory. I mean, it's I think we forgot how much inventory there was on the market before COVID, right? And in some markets like Port St. Lucie, Jupiter, Juneau, Tequesta, North Palm Beach, Wellington, Delray, depending on where you are, Boynton, depending on where you are, Boca, these markets were still having bidding wars before COVID. So, if we just get back to a normal market, then, we're looking at, 30 days on the market is pretty much an average.
Right.
And we're seeing us getting closer to that now. And then, 3 reasons to buy a home today, right? Fewer and multiple offer scenarios. I really believe that buyers are worn out right now. And so, this is an opportunity for them to get back in and end up, right, and an agent has the right 1 or 2 offers for you instead of, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Yeah.
Also, right now, we can get FHA and VA bought, deals done.
Right.
So, looking at these numbers, April, May, and June, you can see the numbers starting to go down nationwide, and you can see the monthly inventory is growing. So I really believe, Brent, that we're getting back to a normalized market here.
Yeah. It's actually good to see, there's choices that people have. I mean, people are settling, for amenities and things like that, and, square footage and all that. I mean, I think it's going to be a good thing to have multiple, choices. And like you say, we were doing pre-qualified letters, multiple times, people making offers on, 10, 15 homes before they would get one. And so it was, like you say, they were kind of tired.
Right.
And like you say, I'm seeing the same thing too. FHA, VA is not a problem where it was really tough 6 months ago to get a seller to accept an offer that way, which is difficult. It's tough.
So what's new in the mortgage industry right now? What can you tell us? New programs out? What's happening?
Yeah, they're starting. There's creative stuff starting to come out. We've seen a 40-year interest only for 10 years for investors. Really interesting program. So it really provides a strong cash flow for that first 10 years. And it's based on the ability for the property to cover the payment. So real interesting programs like that for, serious investors that just really want to look at it for the long haul and, long-term appreciation. Jumbos, that type of thing was really a bank deal before. We were referring those out, anything over, conforming loan limits. And we're in there swinging up to about, $2-3 million now. And we're really competitive that way. So that's pretty much been released to brokers. Those investors are, working with brokers now. So some neat options that way. Guidelines, pretty stable. Like you say, Lee, FHA, VA, we're seeing those types of loans being accepted now, which is great. So that's really what we're seeing right now. And we're seeing that, people are getting the homes they want, you know what I mean? I think that's great. We see a lot of millennials, a lot of people that were kind of holding off on purchasing, gift funds from family members, parents helping them buy their first home. So we're seeing a lot of that right now.
Yeah, and then there's I think we can get back, as we roll back into a more of a normalized market too, we can get back to, doing some of these seller credits and things like that. And I think, next year, if we see this trend continue, that's going to be something that, I think we could start seeing more of, where sellers are willing to do credits and, help people close on their homes.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think, as rates continue, they're trending down right now. They've been trending down for about 6 weeks. And so we've got some folks locked out long term because we didn't know what rates were going to do. So they're covered both ways. They can hang on to their locks, and we do a float down negotiation. Shout out to Matt. He watches this. We're watching it really close for you, Matt. Told me he's going to be watching tonight. So so we're working both ways. I mean, if it makes sense to go with a different investor at some point, we'll look at that. But I think just having that assurance that you're not going to get bumped out because of debt to income ratio, because rates go up so far. Because locking long term, like out 6 months, it's pricey, but that's a stop loss in there that you don't have to worry about not being qualified. So we're seeing that play out, and it's working out for a lot of our folks.
Right. And that's something, again, to be careful with buying new construction is, they're offering all these locks on new construction, but they're not going to do the float down. They're not going to reduce that rate if, in most cases on, pretty much the ones that we're dealing with, they're not offering the lower rate. So it's something that, I know that we're getting calls on right now, and, from clients saying, hey, we're looking at new construction, but we don't want to go with the builder because they're not willing to lower the rate for me if the rates go down. And I think that's going to continue to be a trend. What do you think?
I think so too. I think so too. We have some flexibility that way, which is great. As rates drop, we can work with that and just make adjustments and get that lower rate as well. So, just covering all our bases with these folks. Because every time I get on the phone with someone, I tell them, I know this is an enormous deal for you. It's like it's so important. It's the largest line item, and 95% of people, their highest line item expense every month is their mortgage or their rent, right?
Right.
And so we got to take that seriously, make sure we put in the best possible scenario. And then also, Lee, a lot of the conversations we've had when rates were higher, 6 weeks ago, looking long term, you marry the house, you don't marry your rate. I mean, you can always refinance, and so, with the migration pattern, all that's going on here, it's employment super strong in Florida. So I think, it's an attractive place for many reasons, and we're seeing that kind of play out as well. Still, people
right. And the economists at FAU, I was watching on Channel 5 News, and you can go to Channel 5's website and watch it. But they're talking about the market and what's happening with the housing market. And here's a smart guy who lives in Florida, who's runs the real estate side of the economics department in FAU. And he's saying, listen, we're going to see normalization in the market, but we're not going to see prices come down.
Right. And we want to see that.
Don't have enough demand. I mean, we just don't have enough homes for the demand.
Right. And you're seeing, a few slides back, we're looking at 5.1% increase in wages, right?
Right.
And that's a good thing. And that's a normal, increase. And usually that the housing market tends to trend on that. In other words, people basically they're going to spend as much as they can afford on a home. It's really like, hey, the question I get, frankly, with 90% of the people is, what's the most I can buy?
Right.
Because they want to, invest in a home. They know it's a long-term investment. They know it's going to go up in value. It's going to be a hedge against inflation, all those wonderful things, tax benefits, all that. So it's kind of like, they want to buy the nicest home they can. And so, I'm talking about the middle upper class. So that's really what they're looking for typically. And then, so we watch that wage, number as well, because an employment number, because that really helps drive the housing market, and they're going to watch that closely. They're not going to crash the employment market and and that's why the bond market's responding and with lower rates. And that's, to answer your question earlier, I want to make sure I fully understand, answer that question. Why is it, the prime rate going up and mortgage rates are going down, is because really the Fed has already, said what they're going to do. And that's really, loans for credit cards and, prime rates that commercial banks lend upon, that type of thing. But the market for mortgages really responds in real time to news and money flowing out of institutional investments or stocks, pension funds. They're getting out of those types of investments and going to mortgages as a safe haven. They know that's that's why the lower returns to them, that means a great rate for you. That's really the dynamic, and so that's why they're lower.
Well, a lot of market analysts still believe that, we're heading for a recession and by end of the year and next year. So, the housing market through recessions has always sold. So we've seen housing increase during recession. So again, getting back to, I'm not just saying this because I'm a real estate agent, but I'm saying it because, the indicators are still here that the market's going to keep going up and that we're not going to see price decreases, especially in markets that are lower than like a St. Lucie County market over a Palm Beach County market, where Palm Beach County is much higher than Port St. Lucie. That market in Port St. Lucie is going to continue to go up because you're seeing more and more people moving there, especially with the prices as high as they are in Palm Beach County. We have clients that want to buy new construction and they're just priced out of the market in Palm Beach County, and they're going to continue to be priced out of the market. Where in Port St. Lucie, there's, 2 neighborhoods going in right now that are entry-level homes starting in the high 3s, low 4s.
Right. Go to California, where we lived for 23 years. I mean, we've been here for 12 years now. But, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home in a marginal area is $800,000-$900,000 in an area that's, not that great.
Right.
I mean, it's so you have to look at, globally, you have to look at, nationally, really, what are people's choices, because they're not locked in geographically anymore. I think 30% of people can actually have an option to work from home. It's like, why would you do that?
Right.
I think a lot of people are coming to that conclusion. I saw, it was a comical, podcast. They were talking about, why would you live in California? It was bringing up, the needles on the beach, and you can't have an Amazon package delivered. It's gone in 5 minutes. It's stolen off the front porch, and you're paying $4,000 a month for a 1-bedroom apartment in Venice Beach, and you're 5 blocks from the beach, and it's dangerous. Even, you know what I mean? It's not even safe. And so, there's some things I think people are just coming to, like, hey, hey, do we really need to do this? And so we're seeing that.
Right. Well, the numbers are looking better for inventory. If you have a listing on the market right now and you're a seller, be calm and patient. It's not selling in a day anymore. I can tell you, we've got some really nice listings out on the market right now, and they're all pool homes, and they're sitting right now. So, I think we're going back to school, right? And the kids are going back to school. Yeah. Families are finishing up their vacation time, getting ready to for summer to end. I think people are a little worn out from everything that's happened over the last couple of years. We've had COVID and inflation, and so I think vacation time and time with your family has been something that this summer people have really dug in on, and I think that's good for everyone out there. So we'll see the real estate market bounce back here, like a slingshot, I think, here in the next few weeks. And so if you're a buyer, it's a great time for you. If you're a seller, you just need to be patient. I want to share this because it's kind of fun, and we talked about this today, but so this is really cool. I mean, I was just introduced to this, and I guess this has been happening in South America, but this is a container. So
a container that you see on the railroad.
Right. Yeah. They're building homes and pools out of containers. So you can put this in your backyard. they'll sink it in the ground for you, or they can put it in your backyard as above ground pool. But it's a lap pool, obviously. They can put and then they can put plexiglass in it. And you can drop a pool in for $30,000.
Right?
Right?
Yeah.
Look how nice that is.
I know.
mean, and then like you can make a garage, right? This is
Right.
what they do at the pools too. You know, they put the plexiglass in, so it's like a fish tank.
Right.
Watch everybody. I mean, look at that.
Yeah.
That is cool. Those are containers.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some cool stuff. Yeah.
Now they're growing weed in them too, by the way.
That's what I understand. They're turning them into grow houses. I heard about that. Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really cool, right?
That cantilever out. That's pretty cool. Yeah. They're, I've seen these for a while. It just, getting them financed is a little different. It's a challenge because it's a unique home. But I'm going to look into it more because I think, affordable housing, I think, we're seeing, frankly, a lot of people are retiring on just Social Security, and there's going to be a need for, as baby boomers retire and not have sufficient, funds to live on, you're going to see them work longer, but also you'll see a need for affordable housing, and I think that'd be I'd love to see communities like that pop up where there's, affordable options.
I think this is something that, if we could figure out financing for, this is something you could get some investors behind and build some communities, right?
Right.
I mean, this is fancy, but even this is like, this home would cost you close to $1 million to build a regular home. And
right.
I mean, it's half the price.
And it's hurricane proof, Lee.
And it's hurricane. I mean, they're not going to blow a hurricane's not blowing a steel container down.
Oh yeah, solid steel.
That. Look how cool that is.
Yeah, they can be done very nice. I mean,
here's a nice little 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom. One container. You can make a 2-bedroom out of it. But
are they growing a garden on top of that, Lee?
Yeah, they're growing a garden on top of it.
Wow.
But yeah, and I mean, look how nice this is on the inside.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I mean, what a really cool.
We have 6 kids, Lee. I told my wife, and she says,
"Look at this.
What do you?" Yeah. Yeah, it's neat.
I mean, vacation homes. This would be a one container.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is really, look at that. They wood panel the whole outside. You don't even know it is a container.
Right.
This one they're dragging behind a car.
Oh yeah.
This is a double decker to drag behind your car.
Right. And you've seen the tiny homes as well, I'm sure. And there's some neat ideas out there. I think, that's, there's gonna be a market for that. I mean, well, I know
there is a market for it. I mean,
there is.
Christina Smallhorn, if you check out her YouTube site, she's got well over 100,000 subscribers. It's Christine Smallhorn. You're listening. I'm going to plug her right here. That her whole thing is on tiny homes.
Yeah.
And
I know, I know people that sold their homes. Yeah. There's people here in Florida, Lee, that I've talked to recently that have beautiful homes, and they're talking about Airbnb in their homes, renting them out during the season and just traveling the world in an RV for, the country for 4 months, and
I got one coming on the market in Delray, which is in a non-HOA. And that one has a resort for the backyard, and I'm going to put a video up on it. But yeah, I mean, you could Airbnb that house for $10,000 a month, easy. I mean, it's unbelievable in the back. It's brand new. It's a mile and a half from I-95, which puts you right down the road. It's on Atlantic Boulevard, so it puts you right down the road to downtown Delray with Atlantic Boulevard, where all the restaurants and shops and nightlife is, and then the beach is right down the road, and it's I mean, $750,000, but it's got $250,000 in the backyard. So, but I mean, it's definitely something somebody could buy and Airbnb that, and or live in it, and then when they want to travel throw it with Airbnb and let somebody live in it when they're not there.
Right.
Which you're absolutely right. And in Jupiter right now, speaking of Airbnb, there is a ton of homes on the market in the Heights, which is Palm Beach Heights, right off of 95 and Donald Ross. So there's probably 6-7 homes in there right now for sale that, again, non-HOA, Airbnb it. One of my buddies is a real estate agent in there. He's got 7 homes. He Airbnbs all of them. Him and his parents were in real estate, and he's been in real estate for years. And he lives in the Heights, and it's a great community right outside of Abacoa. So you have that, nice, family community. You can golf cart around and everything. So there's a lot of opportunity right now for buyers. Sellers are putting their homes on the market because they know the fall season is coming. And I think it's a good time to get out there and purchase a home. So with that being said, don't forget that Brent and I are full-time in real estate. He's a full-time mortgage broker. I'm a full-time real estate agent. We'd love to help you if you're in the Palm Beach County or Treasure Coast market, because that's where we do most of our business. But Brent can do business all over Florida. So no matter where you are, he can help you with a mortgage. So if you got no more questions and you've got nothing else to say, Brent, I think we should wrap it up for tonight.
Sounds good.
Next weekend. So we'll be back. We'll be back next week with another market update and more on what's happening with the news and the markets and the housing market. But like I said, if you're a seller right now, be patient. If you're a buyer, don't be patient. Get out there, and we appreciate you coming on. Every single week we're growing here with our little show. So don't forget to leave comments like you are, and we'll answer all of your comments. And if you have not subscribed to the channel, please don't forget to slap that subscribe button, ring that notification bell so you don't miss any of our real estate tips and tours. Go do something nice for somebody this week, and next week come and tell us what you did. Right? Gas prices are still super high, and there's a lot of people out there that are struggling. So go do something nice and tell us all about it. And also be kind to each other, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.